Hey guys, Grant here. Hey, beautiful day today in Albion, Indiana. The sun's out, the colors are bright. Oh, I love this day right now. My Father's Day gift showed up today. I've been waiting on this. I'm really excited about it, and I want to show you guys what it is, and I want to explain to you why it means a lot to me. All right, guys, this is the book that I've been waiting on. It's the Grave by Dan Fraga, and it's the special book plate edition there from Flying Colors Comics. It's signed by Dan, and this book was actually a series of single panel illustrations that were done one day at a time. There's 365 of them over the course of a year. Now, you might ask, what is so special about this particular book? Let me tell you why. The big reason why this book is so special to me is because it carries a lot of meaning to different areas of my life, and it reminds me of those moments. You might ask, well, how can a book that just came out this past week have that kind of impact and that kind of meaning? Well, let me tell you about how this all started. When I was in high school, I graduated from West Noble there in Ligonier, Indiana in 1996. The artist and writer Dan Fraga was just a couple years older than me, and Dan had what I considered the dream job. Dan was working for Image Comics in California. I think it was Southern California. And Image, you guys might know it from Spawn and Cyberforce, Wildcats, whatnot. Image was going through what we call the Image Revolution. A bunch of different comic artists from Marvel decided, you know what, we weren't getting the credit that we felt like we needed, the compensation and whatnot. So they joined together and decided that they're going to start their own comic company, and they're going to draw their own characters, and they're going to own the rights to those characters. And when you're looking back to like '94, you know, when grunge was big. This is a period of time where rebellion was a good thing. It kind of chronicled my life in a lot of ways. This was an idea that was unheard of, and at the time they needed young and inspiring artists, and one of those guys was Dan. And when I was in high school, I followed Dan a lot. I followed him with his Black Flag work. He did some work for Rob Liefeld. There was a lot of different books that Dan touched, the Blood Brothers, Berserkers, you name it. And I always thought, man, I want to do something creatively. At the time, I wanted to draw comic books. But as I got, exploring different areas of creativity, I ended up doing illustration work for ad agencies and also doing graphic design work. Thanks to Dan inspiring me, I was able to spend roughly 22 years as a creative. And even though I'm still, even though I'm disabled now because of my heart issue, I still consider myself a creative because I've never stopped that part. I've continued to create in spite of my heart ailments, and that actually plays a big piece into the story. When Dan was starting to lay out the groundwork for the Grave, it was during a period of my career and my life when I realized my heart was getting worse. It was also probably the highest point of my career. I was making more money than I ever made. I was happier than I had ever been, and I was getting recognized. I was winning awards. I mean, everything that I had hoped would happen was happening. But yet, I was probably as bad as I've ever been health-wise. And I didn't want to give that up. I was struggling with that in the worst way, because it's something I loved, drawing and creating. It's many of you creatives will understand me when I say this. It's not a job. It's not something you just put down. It's a part of you. It's part of your life. It's going to sound really melodramatic in a lot of ways, but it's part of your soul. You can't even expect to enjoy life without being able to create in some ways. And I thought, man, if I lost this because of my heart issue, I'd hate this. And so during this time, I would wait each day, looking forward to the one panel that Dan would release on Facebook. It would completely take me away for a couple minutes because I'd review the previous week's panels to make sure I understood everything and whatnot. And it would kind of take me away from my problems. Comics has done that my whole life. Whenever there's been an issue going on in my life, I disappear in a comic book, drawing pad, whatnot. And it just gives me a lot of comfort and a lot of freedom from the troubles of life, so to speak. And at this point in my life, it was no different. And I would go through, wait for these panels to be released. And I just thought, man, this guy's doing something amazing. He's doing something, one panel a day for an entire year. And he said he would do that up front, so it was a challenge to himself. He was kind of throwing the gauntlet down, so to speak. And to Dan's credit, Dan followed through, and Dan did this. Rain, sleet, snow, sick, whatever the case may be. Dan did that. And it was during that time I got to know Dan a little bit. I would contact him on Facebook, and I'd ask him, some advice here and there, like on my career. Had been wanting to make a change at one point, and he said, you know what, try it for 6 months, see if it works out for you. It might not, but give yourself 6 months to learn it. And I did that, and it was during that time that I realized, man, things are getting worse, and I'm going to need to do something. And I'm going to have to make a choice that I really don't want to make. So I ended up making the choice. I needed to fight my heart illness. I have congestive heart failure. I've had it for almost 12 years now. But it got to the point where I needed a medical intervention, so to speak. What you don't see is I actually have a device called an LVAD, a left ventricular assist device. And I'll show that to you now. This right here is a left ventricular assist device. It's got a lot of buttons and a little screen and whatnot, but this black and this white cord, these cords, actually go to batteries in my pocket, and then this clear looking cord, it goes straight to my heart. It actually goes about right here. It goes into my abdomen, but the white and the black actually go to these batteries that are in my pocket, and I have two of these, and these are what power my heart. As you guys can imagine, that is quite an adjustment to make. Not only did I have to give up my career, my passion, and my profession, but then I had to get adjusted to life with an LVAD. I had to, everywhere I go, I got to make sure I got batteries. I got to make sure that, I'm good. I got to make sure I know what to do in case of one of my whistles going off. And for all intents and purposes, I've become Iron Man. I have my own arc reactor, if you will, and it's just been tough. It's been a blessing, though. And it was during that time that I was getting this that my family encouraged me to create a goal board, and they would also create goal boards for me things that they would like to see me do with my life after LVAD surgery. Kind of gave me motivation to kind of, set the bar high. And one of those things is to meet Dan Fraga. And, I can talk to Dan whenever, I can text him, I can, message him. But there's something about just wanting to shake his hand and say thank you. And that's one of the things I had on my list. And my friend Matt, one of my best friends in the world, he contacted Dan and said, hey, could you FaceTime Gran? This is what's going on. And Dan surprised me. My family knew all about it. It was a particularly rough day. Dan doesn't know this, but literally 30 minutes before we talked, they knocked me out and they used the paddles on me. They shocked me back to life. And I was still just adjusting to that. I was pretty out of it. I don't know if Dan remembers that, me being so out of it, but I was so excited too when the camera tipped down from his back wall, which I thought I recognized, and I saw Dan. And man, what a blessing that was. I feel like the comic art fanboy slash professional in me has really come full circle with this book. And one thing I didn't know until today when I was going through the book, and it's funny because I've seen this quote many, many times over the last couple of years, and I really feel like it's defined my life, especially the last 2 years. It's a Mark Twain quote, and it's in the back of his book. It says, "The fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time." And so often I've heard it's not the amount of years you live, it's the quality of life that you live. And I've also heard it's not the quantity in living, it's the lives that you impact in the time that you have. And man, that is so true. That is so true. This book, it reminds me of my childhood, and my teen years rather. You're not that much older than me, Dan. We're talking about the last 11 years that I've dealt with this heart condition. My career as an artist, one of the hardest times in my life with this LVAD, and a great, great blessing in Dan contacting me and basically FaceTiming with me that day. And that's something you didn't have to do. So, guys, if you get a chance, it's available from IDW Publishing. Contact your local comic book shop. Check it out. Look up Flying Color Comics online, and you can buy the comic there. But, guys, your heroes sometimes they carry a pencil. Sometimes they're the guys that are there for you from a distance that they may never know it, but if you push hard enough, long enough, you'll get to tell them those things. You'll get to say thank you. And, Dan, if you're watching this, I want to say thank you, and I appreciate you, brother, and thanks for inspiring me, and keep inspiring, brother. Keep digging.